Have you ever been absolutely certain about a memory, only to find out the rest of the world remembers it completely differently? Like that time you could have sworn the Berenstain Bears were spelled with an E, not an A. Berenstain, not Berenstain. Or maybe you vividly recall Sinbad starring in a genie movie called Shazam in the 90s, except it never existed. These aren't just quirky mix-ups. They're part of something far stranger, the Mandela Effect, a phenomenon where thousands, even millions of people share the same false memory. But what if it's not false at all? What if these aren't mistakes but glimpses into something much bigger? The Mandela Effect gets its name from one of the most startling examples: countless people remembering Nelson Mandela dying in prison in the 1980s, only to learn he was released, became president of South Africa, and passed away decades later. How could so many misremember the same event in the same way? That's the heart of the debate. On one side, psychologists argue it's about how our brains reconstruct memories, filling gaps with shared cultural influences. But on the other side, some theorists wonder if these false memories are actually echoes of alternate realities bleeding into ours, like a glitch in the simulation or a collision of parallel universes. And believe it or not, quantum physics might hold clues to how this could happen. This isn't just about spelling errors or misquoted movie lines, it's about the very nature of reality itself. Could our collective memories be proof of multiple timelines folding into one another? Or is it all just the quirks of human perception, amplified by the internet age? Over the course of this video, we'll dive into the science, the speculation, and the spine-tingling stories behind the Mandela Effect. From neuroscience to multiverse theory, we're unpacking why so many of us remember things that supposedly never were, and what that might reveal about the fabric of existence. Strap in, because this journey is going to bend your mind in ways you never expected. The term Mandela Effect was first coined in 2009 by paranormal researcher Fiona Broome after she experienced something that shook her understanding of reality. While discussing memories of Nelson Mandela's death in prison with others at a convention, she was stunned to discover many people, just like her, distinctly remembered news coverage of his funeral in the 1980s, mourning songs, political speeches, even clips of his widow in grief. Yet none of it happened. Mandela was still alive. What made this phenomenon different from ordinary memory lapses was the eerie consistency. These weren't isolated mistakes. People across different countries, backgrounds, and ages shared nearly identical details about an event that never occurred. To grasp how strange this is, think about how most false memories work. Normally, if you misremember a fact like the color of a famous logo or a line from a movie, your version might be unique or influenced by personal biases. But the Mandela Effect shows something else entirely. Take the classic example of "Luke, I am your father." Millions swear that's the iconic line from The Empire Strikes Back, but the actual quote is, "No, I am your father." Even more bizarre, the misquoted version doesn't appear in any official script, dubbed version, or blooper reel, yet it's etched into collective memory with alarming precision. Heat maps of these shared false memories reveal even more fascinating patterns. When researchers map out common Mandela Effect examples from the Monopoly man's missing monocle to the fruit of the loom cornucopia that never existed, they find clusters of identical errors spanning continents. These aren't random, they're synchronized. That level of coordination defies typical explanations of how memory works. Neuroscientists suggest it might be due to something called confabulation, where our brains unconsciously blend real events with cultural references or suggestions from others. But that still doesn't fully explain why so many land on the same incorrect version without any shared source material. What makes the Mandela Effect so unsettling isn't just the scale. It's the specificity. People don't just vaguely recall a genie movie starring Sinbad, they describe the same plot points, the same costume, even the same release window. That kind of detail points to something deeper than forgetfulness. Whether it's a quirk of psychology or something more profound, one thing's clear. When thousands of minds independently remember the same fiction, it forces us to question not just how memory works, but how reality does. So how does science explain entire groups of people misremembering the same details so vividly? Enter the work of psychologist Elizabeth Loftus, whose groundbreaking research reveals just how shockingly malleable human memory really is. In one famous experiment, Loftus had participants watch footage of a car accident, then asked some whether the vehicles hit each other while asking others if they smashed together. That one word change dramatically altered recollections. Those who heard "smashed" were far more likely to later report seeing broken glass that wasn't there. This phenomenon, called the misinformation effect, shows how easily outside suggestions can rewrite our mental records without us even realizing, but it gets even stranger. Loftus went further by successfully implanting entirely false memories in people's minds, convincing subjects they'd been lost in shopping malls as children or even attacked by animals, events that never happened. The method, repeated suggestions coupled with plausible details that tap into existing mental frameworks known as schemas. Our brains don't store memories like perfect video recordings. Instead, we reconstruct them piece by piece each time we recall, filling gaps with assumptions and external cues. This explains why so many remember the Fruit of the Loom logo featuring a cornucopia. That basket-like horn of plenty fits our schema for harvest imagery, so our minds automatically insert it when recalling the simpler fruit cluster. Visual comparisons of these Mandela Effect examples reveal telling patterns. Side by side, the actual Monopoly man without his monocle looks strangely incomplete because our brains expect wealthy, old-timey characters to have that distinctive accessory. Same with the missing rifle in the famous Moonraker scene. Drax's smile looks eerily empty without the gun our minds insist should be there, because villainous smirks in movies are almost always paired with weapons. These aren't random errors, they're predictable glitches in how human perception fills in blanks based on cultural conditioning. Yet the million-dollar question remains, if false memories are so individual, why do millions converge on identical distortions? One theory points to the viral nature of modern information. When one person mentions Berenstain Bears online, that spelling spreads exponentially, reinforcing the error through repetition until it overwrites the truth in collective consciousness. But this doesn't fully explain cases like Shazam, where people claim never encountering the supposed film until realizing their memory of it, the unsettling possibility. Some Mandela effects might stem from deeper cognitive wiring, where shared human experiences create identical blind spots in how we process reality. Whether through psychology or something more mysterious, these collective false memories force us to confront an uncomfortable truth. We're far less reliable as eyewitnesses to our own lives than we'd like to believe. The human brain doesn't operate in isolation. It's wired to sync with others, sometimes to the point of sharing the same mistakes. Mirror neurons, the specialized brain cells that fire both when we perform an action and when we see someone else do it, might hold a clue to why false memories spread like wildfire. These neurons originally evolved to help us learn quickly by mimicking others, but they also make us vulnerable to adopting errors without realizing it. Picture a room where one person confidently describes the cornucopia in the Fruit of the Loom logo. As others listen, their mirror neurons activate, simulating that memory in their own minds. Suddenly, what began as one person's mistake becomes a group's shared reality. Studies reveal just how contagious these false memories can be. In a 2015 experiment, researchers exposed participants to fabricated stories like a fictional airline disaster, then had them discuss the event in groups. Astonishingly, nearly 30% of people later claimed to remember details from stories they'd only heard others mention. This social contagion effect doesn't just alter individual recollections, it rewrites collective history. The more a group reinforces a narrative, the more neurons in each member's brain fire as if the event actually happened, cementing the illusion. Visualizing this process shows why the Mandela effect feels so real to those who experience it. Imagine neural pathways lighting up during memory recall, except some of those pathways were built on borrowed misinformation. When someone insists, "I know Pikachu's tail had a black tip," their brain isn't lying. It's faithfully reconstructing a memory pieced together from conversations, fan art, or even misprinted merchandise. The original Pokémon design never included that detail, but the more it's repeated, the more neurons treat it as fact. This neural mirroring explains why some Mandela effects cluster around pop culture. Take Sex and the City versus the actual title, Sex and the City. The incorrect version spreads effortlessly because it aligns with grammatical patterns we hear daily, activating familiar neural templates. Meanwhile, discrepancies like the Looney Tunes versus Looney Tunes debate thrive because our brains default to the more common spelling of tunes, overriding the less intuitive but correct tunes. But here's the twist: while neuroscience explains how these false memories spread, it doesn't always explain why certain versions dominate. Why do millions remember the Sinbad genie movie with nearly identical plot points despite no evidence it existed? Some researchers speculate it's a perfect storm, mirror neurons amplifying vague cultural references, combined with the brain's tendency to fill gaps with predictable story beats. A genie movie fits Hollywood's 90s trends. Sinbad's career included family-friendly comedies, and the name Shazam echoes Kazam, the real Shaq genie film from that era. Once a few people connected these dots, the idea spread like a cognitive virus. What makes this more than just a curiosity is the eerie precision of these shared errors. They're not random, they follow logic, just not the logic of our timeline. Whether that's a quirk of neurology or something stranger, one thing's certain: when your brain insists on a memory that never happened, it might not be working alone. It could be echoing the voices of thousands, or even reflecting a reality that wasn't supposed to exist. What if the Mandela effect isn't just about faulty memory, but actual glimpses into parallel worlds? This is where quantum mechanics crashes the party, turning a psychological curiosity into something straight out of science fiction. Imagine reality as a vast cosmic tapestry, where every decision branches off into new timelines, what physicists call the multiverse. In one universe, maybe Nelson Mandela did die in prison. In another, the Berenstain Bears really were spelled with an E, and somewhere out there, Sinbad's genie movie might have been a blockbuster. The math behind this isn't just wild speculation. Quantum physics suggests that particles can exist in multiple states at once until observed, a phenomenon called superposition. Extend that to the scale of human experience, and you've got the many worlds interpretation. Every possible outcome spawns a new universe. Renowned physicist Michio Kaku likens it to a radio with infinite stations, each playing a slightly different version of reality. Most of the time, these signals stay distinct, but what if they occasionally bleed into one another? Mandela effects could be static from those crossed wires, echoes of timelines that merged or collided, leaving traces in our collective memory. Now here's where it gets eerie. Some theorists point to facilities like CERN Large Hadron Collider as potential hotspots for dimensional interference. When scientists smash particles at nearly the speed of light, they're recreating conditions fractions of a second after the Big Bang, a realm where the laws of physics as we know them warp. Could these experiments briefly puncture the fabric between realities? Footage from CERN often captures unexplained anomalies, strange lights, glitch-like artifacts that enthusiasts argue might be visual proof of these breaches. Skeptics dismiss it as camera artifacts, but the timing is curious. Reports of Mandela effects spiked around the same period the collider began operating at full power. Think of reality like a computer simulation where two save files accidentally overlap. The data gets jumbled, blending elements from different versions. That's why thousands remember the same alternate details. They're not misremembering. They're accessing fragments of a timeline that diverged. Even quantum entanglement hints at this connectivity, where particles instantly influence each other across vast distances, as if information slips through hidden channels. If particles can do it, why not memories? Of course, mainstream science isn't ready to endorse interdimensional memory leaks. But the persistence of these shared errors raises a tantalizing question. What if our brains aren't fabricating false memories but tuning into signals from neighboring dimensions? Whether it's quantum weirdness or neural quirks, one thing's undeniable. The Mandela Effect forces us to confront how little we truly understand about the nature of reality itself. And that mystery, that's where things get really interesting. Pop culture doesn't just reflect our memories, it actively shapes them, often rewriting history without us even noticing. Take Pikachu, the electric face of Pokémon. Ask any fan to draw the character from memory, and a shocking number will include a black tip on its tail, a detail that never existed in the original design. So why do so many swear it was there? Blame the power of visual echoes. Over the years, unofficial merchandise, fan art, and even bootleg animations accidentally added the black tip, spreading the error until it overwrote the real design in collective consciousness. It's a perfect storm of exposure. The more we see a version, even an incorrect one, the more our brains file it away as fact. Movie quotes suffer the same fate. Snow White's evil queen never actually said, "Mirror, mirror on the wall." The real line is "magic mirror on the wall," yet the misquote dominates pop culture. Why? Because fairy tale retellings and parodies, from Disney's own marketing to Shrek's comedic spin, defaulted to the rhythmic, more memorable phrasing. Every time someone repeats "mirror, mirror" in a meme, TV show, or commercial, it reinforces the false memory, stacking until the original feels wrong. Side-by-side comparisons reveal just how pervasive this distortion is. In Star Wars, Darth Vader's iconic reveal, "No, I am your father," is constantly misremembered as "Luke, I am your father." The misquote makes logical sense. It clarifies who's speaking, and countless parodies, from Toy Story to Family Guy, have cemented the incorrect version. Similarly, Field of Dreams, "If you build it, he will come," morphs into "they will come" in Public Recall, likely because pluralizing it feels more inclusive, more right, even if it's not what was said. The internet amplifies these errors at lightning speed. A single viral post misquoting the Lion King's Hakuna Matata as "what a wonderful phrase" instead of "it means no worries" can spawn thousands of repetitions overnight. Our brains, wired to prioritize familiarity, then mistake frequency for accuracy. This isn't just about mishearing, it's about collective reconstruction. When media saturates us with altered versions, those tweaks become the new default. But here's the twist: some Mandela effects resist this explanation. Why would millions remember Shazam when no parodies or memes ever referenced it? That lingering question is what keeps the debate alive. Whether it's faulty neurons or fractured timelines, one thing's clear: pop culture doesn't just entertain us. It edits us, and sometimes those edits stick. What if corporations are secretly rewriting history and then convincing us we're the ones misremembering? That's the spine-chilling claim behind the corporate gaslighting conspiracy, where companies stand accused of quietly altering brand details while dismissing the discrepancies as mass false memories. Take Chick-fil-A's iconic cow billboards urging customers to eat more chicken. Thousands insist the cows originally held misspelled signs reading "eat more chicken" with an O. Yet trademark archives show no such version ever existed. The company's official stance, a polite shrug, chalking it up to the Mandela effect, but skeptics aren't buying it. Dive into trademark databases and you'll unearth even more eyebrow-raising cases. Jif Peanut Butter's logo, for example, has never included the cartoon spoon many swear they recall, just a simple cursive font. Similarly, Oscar Mayer's packaging never featured that second in Mayer, despite legions of consumers ready to bet their lunch money otherwise. These archives act like a reality checkpoint, revealing that the original versions people remember often leave no paper trail. So why the disconnect? Some theorists argue corporations have everything to gain from these stealthy tweaks. Imagine subtly modernizing a logo or slogan, then denying any change ever occurred. The result, free viral buzz as confused customers debate online, driving brand engagement without a cent spent on marketing. Even better, any backlash gets deflected onto faulty memories rather than corporate decisions. It's a masterclass in psychological manipulation. Alter the product, let the public notice, then watch as they gaslight themselves into questioning their own recall. But here's where it gets even stranger. Some researchers point to physical evidence that seems to contradict official records, like vintage store signs or promotional items featuring the wrong versions. How could a misremembered logo appear on a decades-old lunchbox, unless, of course, those artifacts slip through from another timeline? Whether it's corporate trickery or dimensional bleed, one thing's undeniable. When even trademarks can't be trusted, reality starts feeling like a choose-your-own adventure book with invisible edits. The most unsettling part, we might never get a straight answer. Companies have little incentive to admit to these changes, and without concrete proof, the debate rages on. But next time you're certain a brand looked different, don't dismiss that nagging feeling too quickly. Your memory might be sharper than the official record wants you to believe. Could time travelers be tinkering with the past, leaving behind Mandela effects as breadcrumbs of their meddling? It sounds like the plot of a sci-fi thriller, but a surprising number of online communities take this theory deadly seriously. Forums like Reddit's r/Mandela Effect buzz with users convinced these discrepancies aren't memory lapses or corporate rebranding, they're evidence of future shifts, alterations made by time travelers that ripple backward, rewriting history. One viral post points to the infamous Flintstones versus Flintstones debate, arguing the missing T was erased by chrononauts optimizing language for efficiency. Others insist the Monopoly Man's monocle vanished because a time traveler prevented its invention in some alternate 19th century. The logic, even tiny changes could butterfly effect into massive historical deviations, and these glitches are the seams where the new timeline hasn't fully stitched together. But physicists like Sean Carroll shut this down hard. Retrocausality, the idea that future events can influence the past, violates fundamental laws of entropy and causality. Carroll compares it to trying to unscramble an egg. The universe's arrow of time, he explains, isn't just a convention, it's baked into the fabric of thermodynamics. Energy disperses, systems grow more disordered, and information flows forward. For retrocausality to work, you'd need a mechanism to reverse entropy locally, something even theoretical physics hasn't cracked. And yet, the online theories persist, often fueled by eerie coincidences. When CERN Large Hadron Collider powered up in 2008, reports of Mandela effects surged, leading some to speculate the experiments accidentally opened micro-wormholes for time tourists. What makes these claims so seductive isn't their scientific merit, it's the storytelling. Human brains are wired for narrative, and time traveler sabotage fits neatly into our love of conspiracy and control. It's more satisfying to imagine shadowy figures rewriting reality than accepting that memory is fallible. Reddit threads dissecting supposed shift logs, user-compiled lists of changes across timelines read like collaborative sci-fi, with contributors weaving elaborate backstories for each edit. The VW logo's missing line, a rogue time agent's attempt to destabilize German industry. the Kit Kat hyphen's disappearance, corporate espionage from a future where Nestlé dominates the time trade. The irony, these theories often rely on the very memory flaws they claim to explain. Users will passionately debate whether Curious George ever had a tail, citing childhood toys as proof, only to discover those toys were misprints. The real mystery isn't time travel, it's why we'd rather invent cosmic explanations than admit our minds play tricks on us. As Carroll puts it, the universe is weird enough without adding time paradoxes to the mix. But try telling that to the internet, where the line between physics and fanfiction gets blurrier by the day. Some of the most jaw-dropping Mandela effects don't involve misquoted movies or logos, they're about the planet itself changing overnight. Scroll through online reality shift logs, and you'll find hundreds of people documenting bizarre geographical discrepancies they swear weren't there before. The most debated, South America's location. For many, their mental map placed it almost directly under North America, with the two continents nearly aligned vertically. But pull up a modern world map, and you'll see South America sitting much farther to the east, so far that its western edge now hovers under Florida instead of California. The distance feels impossible to unsee once you notice it. Vintage classroom maps and atlases only deepen the mystery. Old geography textbooks clearly show South America's former alignment, with the continents stacked more neatly like Lego blocks. Yet NASA official cartographic records tell a different story. Satellite imagery from the 1960s onward consistently shows the current eastern shift, with no documented drift over time. If this were a case of continental plates moving, scientists estimate it would take millions of years to cover that distance. So how do we explain the flood of testimonies from people who learned geography in the same era but recall a completely different layout? Theories range from the unsettling to the downright apocalyptic. Some speculate that CERN particle experiments or secret government projects accidentally nudged Earth into a parallel universe with subtle topological differences. Others point to the quantum immortality hypothesis, the idea that when we die in one timeline, our consciousness shifts to a nearly identical reality, where small changes like geography might be off by degrees. And then there's the simulation argument. If we're living in a digital construct, maybe these shifts are patches or updates rolling out glitches in the system. But before you spiral, consider the neuroscience angle. Human spatial memory is notoriously unreliable. Most of us don't study maps daily, and the Mercator projection, the distorted map style dominating classrooms, exaggerates sizes and positions. Our brains simplify what we see, often assuming symmetry where none exists. Combine that with the fact that South America does tilt slightly west near the equator, and you've got a recipe for collective misremembering. Still, the sheer volume of identical reports keeps the debate alive. From New Zealand's position relative to Australia to the sudden appearance of a landmass called Sandy Island that later vanished from maps, these geographical Mandela effects challenge our trust in the ground beneath our feet, literally. Whether it's faulty memory or a flickering multiverse, one thing's certain: the world might not be as fixed as we think, and that realization, it changes everything. The debate between psychology and the paranormal reaches a fever pitch when we examine what's happening inside the brain during these bizarre memory glitches. On one side, mainstream science points to EEG scans showing how false memories light up the hippocampus and prefrontal cortex, the same regions that activate when we imagine fictional events. Studies at universities like Northwestern demonstrate that when people confidently recall events that never happened, their brain activity looks almost identical to recalling real experiences. This overlap explains why false memories feel so real. To your neurons, there's no difference, but the plot thickens when you compare these scans to those of people who report true anomaly. Mandela affects individuals who claim visceral, unshakable certainty about alternate versions of reality. Their brain activity tells a different story. Dr. Deepak Chopra, a controversial figure straddling neuroscience and metaphysics, argues these outliers might be tapping into something beyond faulty cognition. He points to cases where anomaly experiencers show heightened activity in the temporal lobe's areas, linked to mystical experiences and déjà vu, along with unusual synchronization between brain hemispheres. Unlike typical false memory patterns, their neural signatures resemble states associated with profound intuition or even purported psychic phenomena. Skeptics dismiss this as wishful thinking, but the data raises provocative questions. Why would some brains process these errors like spiritual epiphanies rather than mundane misremembering? Consider the case of a woman who swore she'd attended a concert by the band Smokey Robinson and the Miracles in 1975. EEG scans revealed her memory triggered not just memory centers but the insula, a region tied to visceral, bodily awareness of truth. Later, she discovered an old ticket stub confirming the concert, except official records showed the group disbanded in 1972. Chopra's team suggests her brain might have accessed a non-local consciousness field, a controversial idea where memories exist outside the brain, like radio waves waiting to be tuned into. Mainstream scientists balk at this, countering that the insula also activates during intense emotional recall, which could explain her conviction. The real friction comes when you examine experiential differences. Most people shrug off Mandela effects as curiosities, but anomaly experiencers often describe physical symptoms, headaches, time distortions, even temporary glitches, like briefly seeing both versions of a logo superimposed. One study documented a man who recalled the Apollo 13 astronauts saying, "Houston, we've had a problem," the correct line, while simultaneously remembering the more famous misquote, "Houston, we have a problem," with equal clarity. His EEG showed conflicting activity in left and right brain hemispheres, as if two truths were wrestling for dominance. Traditional psychology has no framework for this duality. Chopra's boldest claim, that consciousness itself might be a quantum phenomenon, with Mandela effects acting as interference patterns between realities. He cites experiments where meditators intentionally shift their memories of objects, with some showing temporary changes in sensory perception, though these findings remain hotly debated. Meanwhile, neurologists like Dr. Julia Shaw argue these anomalies simply prove how easily our brains construct convincing fictions. The truth might lie somewhere in between. When scans show memory centers firing alongside areas linked to spiritual awe, it suggests the Mandela effect isn't just about faulty wiring. It's about the brain's terrifying capacity to bridge the gap between what we know and what we feel. Against all evidence must be true. Before the internet, the Mandela effect spread like whispered folklore, slow, patchy, and limited by geography. Take the classic Monopoly man's monocle. Those who grew up in the 70s and 80s might have casually mentioned the era to friends, only to be met with blank stares. Without a global platform to compare notes, these mismatches stayed isolated curiosities. Contrast that with digital era examples like the Shazam movie. The moment someone online said, "Hey, where's that Sinbad genie film?" the idea exploded across forums, social media, and video platforms, snowballing into a full-blown collective phenomenon within days. The difference: velocity. The internet doesn't just spread these ideas, it supercharges them, turning personal hunches into viral certainties. Google Trends paints a startling picture. Searches for Berenstain Bears spelling show near zero activity before 2009, then a meteor-like spike after a Reddit thread went viral. Same with KitKat barely a blip until a 2015 Twitter debate sent searches rocketing 600% overnight. These spikes don't just reflect curiosity, they map how quickly a single post can rewrite public memory. Psychologists call it reiterative reinforcement. The more a claim circulates, the more our brains file it as fact, regardless of evidence. Before the web, you might hear a Mandela effect theory once and forget it. Now you'll see it reposted, memed, and discussed until the wrong version feels truer than reality. The mechanics behind this are eerily precise. When a Mandela Effect post gains traction, it follows a predictable contagion pattern, first clustering in niche communities like paranormal forums, then leaking into mainstream platforms through influencers and clickbait headlines. Each share acts like a cognitive domino, toppling the next person's certainty. Case in point, the fruit of the loom cornucopia myth lay dormant for decades until a 2013 BuzzFeed article included it in a glitch in the Matrix list. Within weeks, thousands who'd never noticed the logo before were swearing they remembered the mythical basket. The internet didn't just spread the idea, it created the false memory wholesale. But here's what makes digital-era Mandela effects uniquely slippery. They weaponize our trust in crowds. Humans are hardwired to think, if everyone says it, it must be true. Online, where algorithms prioritize popular content, that bias goes into overdrive. When 10,000 tweets insist Pikachu's tail was black-tipped, your brain doesn't just accept the error, it manufactures a sensory memory to match. And because these platforms thrive on engagement, they keep serving you proof, like fan art or mislabeled merchandise, deepening the illusion. The result: a feedback loop where fiction morphs into mass hallucination, all while the original truth vanishes under an avalanche of consensus. What's wild is how this plays out in real time. Track the Moonraker braces debate. Before YouTube reactors started highlighting Darla's toothless grin, few remembered her with braces. Now, comment sections overflow with viewers describing the orthodontic hardware in vivid detail right down to the silver brackets. The internet isn't just revealing Mandela effects anymore, it's engineering them, and that raises a chilling question. In a world where perception is crowdsourced, how do we separate memory from myth? The answer might be hiding in our search history if we dare to look. Ever notice how some movie quotes become so iconic they rewrite the actual scripts in our minds? This isn't just faulty memory, it's cultural script theory in action. Our brains don't store information like cold, hard data. Instead, they rely on pre-existing narrative templates. Universal story beats so deeply ingrained that they overwrite reality when something doesn't fit. Take Darth Vader's big reveal in The Empire Strikes Back. The real line, "No, I am your father," is powerful, but it lacks context. Our mental storytelling machinery insists on inserting Luke at the start because that's how dialogue works. Speakers clarify who they're addressing. The misquote feels right because it follows the rules of dramatic reveals we've absorbed from countless stories. This phenomenon explodes when you compare edited supercuts of famous scenes. Side by side, you'll see how parodies and pop culture references have systematically fixed the originals to match our expectations. The Shining's "Here's Johnny" is often recalled as "Here's Johnny" with an exclamation point, even though Jack Nicholson delivers it as a guttural growl. Why? Because late-night TV and comedy sketches amplified the energy, turning it into a punchline that overwrote the original's menace. Similarly, Casablanca's "Play It Again, Sam" never happened. The actual line is "Play it, Sam." But the misquote sticks because it fits the rhythm of nostalgic callback our brains crave. These edits don't just tweak words, they reshape entire performances. Watch a compilation of Taxi Driver's "You Talkin' to Me" scene. De Niro's improvisation was fragmented, mumbled. Yet collective memory has polished it into a crisp, defiant challenge. Pop culture sanded off the rough edges, turning raw realism into a quotable archetype. Even Gone with the Wind's "Frankly, my dear, I don't give a damn" often gets misremembered with "I don't give a damn anymore," as if our minds can't accept Rhett Butler walking away without finality. The scary part, these templates are so strong they can implant entirely fictional moments. Thousands swear Forrest Gump's "Life is like a box of chocolates" continued with "You never know what you're gonna get." But that second half, nowhere in the film, It's a cultural ghost conjured by our need for symmetrical wisdom. These aren't mistakes, they're upgrades, proof that stories don't belong to their creators. They belong to the collective imagination, which remixes them until they align with the myths we've always known. Brand logos seem like the last things we'd misremember after all. They're designed to be unforgettable. Yet some of the most debated Mandela effects revolve around these familiar symbols. Take Ford's iconic blue oval logo. A staggering number of people recall a distinctive curly Q on the F, a whimsical flourish that's supposedly connected to the top of the letter. But scour through old advertisements or even vintage car emblems, and you'll find no trace of it. The logo has always been clean and unadorned, so why do so many picture that decorative loop? One theory points to the brain's tendency to fill in gaps with aesthetically pleasing details, especially for brands we've seen thousands of times without really scrutinizing. The human mind loves symmetry and flair, so it might have retroactively added the curl to make the design complete. Then there's the human body itself, specifically the heart's location. Medical professionals face this misconception daily, patients pointing to the center of their chest when describing heart pain, despite the organ actually sitting left of center, tucked behind the ribs. This mix-up isn't just casual ignorance. Countless people vividly recall anatomy diagrams placing the heart dead center, often alongside lungs depicted as perfectly symmetrical mirrors rather than their lopsided biological reality. Even popular media reinforces this. From Valentine's Day cards to hospital dramas, the heart gets visually centered for balance and drama. Our brains prioritize simplicity over accuracy, defaulting to a neater, more symbolic layout that overwrites the messy truth. Geography offers some of the most unsettling examples, with New Zealand's placement sparking widespread debate. For many, the country sat northeast of Australia, a short hop from Queensland. But modern maps show it shifted significantly southeast, so far that its northern tip now aligns with Melbourne. Old classroom globes and atlases only deepen the confusion, with some vintage editions supporting the misremembered position while others match today's alignment. This discrepancy fuels wild theories, from tectonic shifts happening overnight to parallel Earths merging. But the likelier culprit, the Mercator map distortion, which stretches landmasses unevenly, combined with the fact that we rarely study precise coordinates after grade school. Our mental maps are rough sketches, not satellite images. Perhaps no category resonates more emotionally than the alive again, celebrities, public figures whose deaths people swear happened years earlier. Mr. Rogers is a prime example. Fans recall him wearing cardigans buttoned on the opposite side after his passing, as if some cosmic wardrobe change accompanied his return from the original timeline. Others insist comedian Sinbad died in the 90s, only to be shocked by his active Twitter feed. These cases hit differently because they're personal. When collective memory overwrites a beloved figure's fate, it shakes our trust in time itself. Whether it's neurological misfires or something more mysterious, these categories prove the Mandela effect isn't just about trivia, it's about how we construct reality, one seemingly insignificant detail at a time. What if surviving a brush with death doesn't just change your life, it changes your reality? This is the spine-tingling premise behind quantum immortality, a theory that suggests when we cheat death, our consciousness might leap into a nearly identical timeline where the fatal event never occurred. And according to some near-death experiencers, the world they return to often feels subtly off. Take the case of a Reddit user who survived a horrific car crash, only to discover his childhood home's layout had changed, doors swapped places, rooms felt smaller. When he confronted his family, they insisted it had always been that way, but he knew. This eerie dissonance mirrors countless accounts from those revived after cardiac arrest or accidents, who report uncanny Mandela effects in their post-revival lives. From celebrity deaths they swear already happened to brand logos that don't look right. The science behind this toes the line between metaphysics and quantum mechanics. In the many worlds interpretation, every decision spawns new timelines, including ones where you survive events that should have killed you. Proponents argue that when your body dies in one reality, your awareness simply continues in the next closest universe where you're still alive. The catch: these parallel worlds might have tiny discrepancies, like the fruit of the loom cornucopia returning or the Monopoly man's monocle vanishing. A 2022 study published in the Journal of Near-Death Studies documented over 300 cases where resuscitated patients reported persistent reality shifts, from geographical changes to historical events they couldn't reconcile with records. One woman vividly recalled Mandela's prison death after her ND, despite knowing he'd died years later in her original timeline. Skeptics dismiss this as post-traumatic confabulation, the brain stitching together comforting narratives after trauma. But the consistency of these reports is haunting. Multiple ND survivors describe the same phenomena: familiar faces behaving out of character, vanished landmarks, even entire cities relocated. A firefighter who flatlined for 90 seconds swore his hometown's river had moved north post-revival, a claim backed by no maps, until he found a single 19th century surveyor's document showing the waterway's original course. Coincidence, maybe, but when you hear a nurse recount how a patient awoke from cardiac arrest insisting the hospital's wing count was wrong, only to discover blueprints had been altered during renovations years prior, it's hard not to wonder. The darkest implication: if quantum immortality is real, we might all be survivors of countless deaths we never experienced. Every Mandela effect could be a scar from a timeline collapse, a phantom pain from a version of you that didn't make it. Whether it's neuroscience or the multiverse at work, one thing's certain: reality might be far more fragile than we think, and that realization changes what it means to be alive or to have ever died at all. What if the Mandela effect isn't about faulty memories or parallel universes, but proof we're living inside an advanced simulation? Think of reality like a massive multiplayer video game where the developers roll out stealth updates, tweaking minor details without announcing them. Players might not notice when a texture gets polished or a side quest's dialogue changes until someone points out the old version's gone. That's exactly how simulation theorists explain these bizarre collective memory glitches. When the system updates, it doesn't just alter code, it rewrites history itself, leaving only faint traces in our minds. Consider how video games handle patches. In World of Warcraft, entire zones have been redesigned overnight, yet players adapt without questioning. Only when someone digs up old screenshots does the discrepancy surface. Now apply that to reality. The sudden disappearance of the cornucopia from Fruit of the Loom's logo. That could be the universe's equivalent of a graphical downgrade, a cost-saving measure by the Sims developers. Even geographical Mandela effects, like South America's shifted position, mirror how games sometimes relocate landmarks to optimize server loads. Players, or in our case, conscious beings, only notice when their mental maps clash with the new terrain. The scariest part: this theory explains why so many Mandela effects cluster around pop culture and branding. In a simulation, these elements would function like UI assets, easily adjustable without disrupting core gameplay. Just as a game might update its menu fonts or item icons, our reality's graphics team could tweak logos or movie quotes for aesthetic consistency. Meanwhile, fundamental physics stays untouched because altering gravity or light speed would crash the system. Even the infamous Shazam movie fits this model. If The Sims narrative scripts got revised last minute, maybe to avoid copyright issues or streamline storylines, residual files might linger in player memories like deleted scenes haunting a film's cutting room floor. Some researchers take it further, suggesting Mandela effects could be deliberate breadcrumbs left by the simulation's creators. Philosopher Nick Bostrom, who pioneered modern simulation theory, argues advanced civilizations might embed anomalies to test if players detect their artificial environment. The more we notice these glitches, the closer we get to uncovering the truth, like NPCs realizing they're trapped in a coded world. Others counter that these inconsistencies are just bugs from an overloaded system. With billions of conscious entities processing data non-stop, even the most advanced simulation would have rendering errors, but here's where it gets truly mind-bending. If we are in a simulation, the Mandela effect might be our only way to perceive its underlying mechanics. Like a character in The Matrix glimpsing déjà vu as a loop reset, these memory mismatches could be the seams showing. Every time you stare at the unchanged VW logo despite remembering a gap, or hear Darth Vader's real quote and feel cognitive dissonance, you're brushing against the code. Whether it's a developer's oversight or a hidden message, one thing's certain: reality's changelog is far more mysterious than any video game's patch notes. And if we keep noticing the edits, we might just trigger the next update, or worse, get flagged for debugging. Long before the internet amplified collective memory glitches, history was already littered with unexplained discrepancies, cases where groups of people shared identical, false memories of events that official records insist never occurred. Take the sinking of the Titanic in 1912. Multiple survivors later recounted a moonlit night, describing how the stars reflected off the calm ocean as the ship went down. Their testimonies matched eerily down to details like seeing the iceberg silhouette against a bright sky, but meteorological records tell a different story. That night was overcast with no moonlight to illuminate the disaster. How could dozens of eyewitnesses recall celestial details that simply weren't there? World War II veterans provide another chilling example. Many who served in the Pacific Theater vividly remembered President Franklin D. Roosevelt surviving an assassination attempt in 1933, just before his first inauguration. They recalled newsreels showing the would-be assassin's bullet grazing Roosevelt's cheek, his calm response soothing a panicked crowd, yet no such event took place. The closest historical parallel, Giuseppe Zangara's botched attack on Roosevelt in 1933, killed Chicago's mayor instead, and FDR was never struck. So why did so many soldiers, separated by continents and units, share this fabricated memory? These pre-digital cases reveal something crucial. The Mandela effect isn't a modern phenomenon born of viral misinformation. It's a deep-seated quirk of human cognition that's existed for centuries. In the 1800s, dozens of Londoners swore they'd attended a public execution at Newgate Prison, featuring a dramatic last-minute pardon only for historians to confirm no such reprieve ever occurred. Their descriptions aligned perfectly, from the prisoner's red shirt to the crowd's collective gasp when the executioner stayed his hand. These weren't lazy memories. They were full sensory experiences etched with unsettling clarity. What ties these historical cases together is their emotional weight. The Titanic's sinking, wartime traumas, life and death courtroom dramas, these weren't trivial details. They were pivotal moments that shaped lives. Neurologists suggest that high-stakes events overload the brain's encoding process, causing it to patch gaps with plausible fragments. A moonlit night fits our cultural template for tragedy. An assassination attempt aligns with Roosevelt's era of political unrest. The brain doesn't just misremember. It screenwrites, drafting narratives that resonate emotionally, even if they defy facts. But there's another layer. Some researchers point to fringe accounts like a 1934 newspaper clipping that vaguely references rumors of presidential danger, or sailors' logs mentioning strange luminescence during the Titanic sinking. Could these be echoes of discarded timelines, or proof that history itself is less fixed than we assume? Whether it's neural shortcuts or reality fractures, one thing's clear: our past is far more malleable than textbooks suggest. And that realization doesn't just challenge memory, it rewrites history itself. The human brain's ability to create convincing false memories isn't unique to the Mandela effect. It mirrors a clinical condition that neurologists have studied for decades. Confabulation, a phenomenon where brain injury patients generate elaborate but entirely fictional memories, shows eerie parallels to these mass misremembering events. Patients with damage to the hippocampus or frontal lobes might vividly describe attending a wedding last weekend or having breakfast with a long-dead relative, completely unaware these events never happened. What's chilling? Their descriptions carry the same rich detail and emotional conviction as Mandela Effect experiencers recalling the cornucopia they swear was in the fruit of the Loom logo. Functional MRI scans reveal why this happens. When confabulating patients recall false memories, their hippocampi light up with activity nearly identical to genuine recollection, the same pattern seen in studies of people describing Mandela effects. This neural overlap suggests our brains don't distinguish between real and constructed memories at the biological level. The hippocampus dutifully stitches together plausible fragments, a childhood logo here, a Thanksgiving cornucopia there, creating a seamless mental image that feels as authentic as yesterday's dinner. Yet key differences emerge when you examine the mechanics. Clinical confabulation typically produces highly personal false memories, unique to the individual and often bizarrely implausible, like claiming to have gone skydiving with the Pope. Mandela effects, by contrast, show remarkable uniformity across unrelated people. While a confabulating patient might invent any number of serial mascot details, thousands converge independently on that single missing monocle on the Monopoly Man. This discrepancy hints that something more than random neural misfiring is at work in collective false memories. The temporal lobes add another layer to the puzzle. In confabulation patients, these areas often show reduced activity during false recall, impairing their ability to filter implausibilities. But scans of Mandela effect experiencers reveal something unexpected. Their temporal lobes remain fully engaged, treating the false memory with the same credibility check as real ones. This might explain why Mandela effects resist correction. Unlike confabulations that collapse under logical scrutiny, these shared false memories persist because our brains verify them as thoroughly as actual events. Perhaps most intriguing are cases where brain injuries appear to trigger sudden awareness of Mandela effects. Numerous reports describe patients post-stroke or concussion becoming convinced that reality has changed, not just misremembering logos, but feeling certain their hospital's layout has shifted overnight. Their brains, already in a vulnerable state, might be temporarily sensitized to subtle discrepancies most people overlook. These cases blur the line between neurological disorder and something else entirely. If damage to specific regions can make alternate memories feel viscerally real, could the Mandela effect be a mild, widespread version of this phenomenon? A temporary glitch in our collective neural editing software. The unsettling truth is that our memories were never perfect recordings. They're creative reconstructions, vulnerable to both individual brain chemistry and cultural suggestion. Whether through injury-induced confabulation or mass cultural priming, the end result is the same, a conviction so strong, so detailed, that no amount of evidence can shake it. And that realization forces us to ask, if our brains can fabricate the past this convincingly, how much of what we know can we truly trust? Social media doesn't just reflect our memories, it actively molds them, transforming isolated quirks into unshakable truths through algorithmic alchemy. Picture this: you idly comment on a post about the Berenstain Bears spelling, and suddenly your feed floods with groups debating the same Berenstain memory. Before long, you're drowning in posts from strangers who swear they own the same misspelled books. This isn't coincidence. It's the echo chamber effect in action, where platforms like Facebook and TikTok amplify fringe ideas until they feel like consensus. Studies show these algorithms prioritize engagement over accuracy, so the more a Mandela effect post gets reactions, the wider it spreads, cue a self-reinforcing loop where doubt withers under the weight of collective certainty. Dive into groups like Dimensional Shifters United or Reality Glitch Survivors, and you'll find thousands of members swapping eerily consistent memories of events that never happened. One viral thread detailed a fictional 90s cartoon called Cry Baby Lane, complete with plot summaries and character designs. The catch: the show didn't exist until users' shared nostalgia conjured it into being, a phenomenon so potent that Nickelodeon eventually aired a real special by that name in 2020, effectively retrofitting fiction into fact. These spaces don't just host discussions, they manufacture reality through sheer repetition, with each "I remember that too" post acting as another brick in the collective hallucination. The mechanics behind this are both simple and sinister. When you linger on a post about, say, the non-existent Sinbad genie movie, the algorithm logs your interest and serves you related content, videos analyzing lost footage, threads confirming its existence, even AI-generated mock posters. Before long, your brain starts filing these suggestions as first-hand memories. Neuroscientists call this memory conformity, where external input overwrites recall like a Wikipedia edit war. In one experiment, researchers exposed subjects to fake news articles about a made-up event, then had them discuss it in a moderated Facebook group. After just 2 weeks, over half the participants developed full-fledged memories of the fictional incident, complete with emotional details. Now scale that to millions of users across decades, and you've got a recipe for mass cognitive rewiring. What makes social media uniquely dangerous is its ability to erase dissenting voices. Platforms thrive on homogeneity. If you believe South America shifted eastward, your feed will show you maps proving it while suppressing debunks. This creates a hall of mirrors where every reflection confirms your bias. Case in point, polls in Mandela Effect groups often show 90% agreement on fabricated details, not because they're true, but because skeptics were algorithmically filtered out long ago. Even search engines play along. Google Monopoly Man Monocle, and the first images you'll see, fan art and memes of the eyepiece he never wore, cementing the error before you've clicked a single link. The darkest twist: some theorists argue these platforms aren't just distorting memory, they're hijacking it for profit. Viral Mandela Effect debates generate staggering ad revenue, incentivizing companies to let misinformation thrive. Every time you argue over the cornucopia that never was, you're not just feeding the algorithm, you're feeding an industry built on your certainty. Whether by design or accident, social media has become the ultimate architect of alternate histories, one where the loudest fiction drowns out the quiet truth. And in that war of narratives, reality doesn't stand a chance. Language doesn't just communicate reality, it actively distorts it, bending memory through subtle tricks of sound and spelling. Take the household cleaner Febreze. For years, people insisted the brand name had 2 E's, Febreze, because that's how it sounded in commercials. Our brains, wired to prioritize phonetic logic over visual accuracy, auto-completed the extra E to match words like sneeze or freeze. This isn't a one-off fluke. Phonetic interference explains why so many Mandela effects cluster around spelling. Oscar Mayer becomes Mayer to match familiar surnames. Cheez-Its gains an extra T to mirror bits or fits, and chic filet loses its K because chick feels more intuitive. These aren't random errors, they're linguistic inevitabilities, cases where spoken language bulldozes written truth. Translation amplifies this distortion exponentially. Consider the Lord's Prayer recited by billions worldwide. In Matthew 6:13, most modern Bibles conclude with "For thine is the kingdom," yet countless worshippers vividly recall an older, grander finale. "For thine is the kingdom and the power and the glory forever." This extended version does appear in some ancient manuscripts, but not the ones modern translations use. The discrepancy, centuries of oral tradition and liturgical repetition, cemented the fuller phrasing in collective memory, while scholars quietly trimmed it to match older texts. Here, language didn't just alter memory, it sacralized the error, making a translator's footnote feel like divine writ. Etymology trees reveal how these distortions snowball. The word dilemma was originally dilemma with two M's from the Greek d2 and lemma premises, but because English speakers overwhelmingly pronounced it dilemma with an N sound, dictionaries eventually surrendered to popular usage. Now, even academic texts often print the wrong version. This surrender isn't laziness, it's linguistic democracy in action. When enough people misremember a word, the mistake becomes the rule. The same process explains why sherbet morphs into sherbet, the extra R mirrors Herbert, or why Reese's Pieces often gets pluralized as Reese's Paces, matching the double E pattern of piece. Language evolves not by facts but by collective consensus. Historical translations offer even wilder examples. The King James Bible's unicorns from the Hebrew rem, likely a wild ox or Easter, a replacement for the Hebrew Pesach, weren't translation errors so much as cultural adaptations bridging gaps with familiar terms that later generations took literally. Today, millions picture actual unicorns in scripture because a translator chose a poetic equivalent. Similarly, Mandarin speakers debate whether Cinderella's glass slipper was originally fur, a mistranslation of ver French for squirrel fur as ver glass. These aren't innocent mistakes, they're linguistic time bombs rewriting history one syllable at a time. The terrifying takeaway: language doesn't just describe reality, it scripts it. Every pronunciation quirk, every translation shortcut, every autocorrect glitch is a potential Mandela effect in embryo, waiting for enough neural reinforcement to overwrite truth. And in a world where voice assistants and predictive text accelerate these errors, future generations may inherit a reality where Febreze was always spelled that way because enough people insisted it was. The line between memory and myth isn't just blurry, it's written in disappearing ink. Carl Jung's concept of the collective unconscious suggests a deeper layer of human experience, one where our minds might be tapping into a shared well of archetypes and symbols that transcend individual memory. Imagine a vast psychic library where the Berenstain Bears, or the Monopoly Man's monocle exist as fragments of collective imagery, subtly influencing how we reconstruct reality. Jung called these moments of eerie alignment synchronicities, meaningful coincidences that hint at hidden connections between the personal and the universal. When thousands independently remember the same fictional genie movie, could it be more than coincidence? Jung might argue these shared errors are symbolic echoes bubbling up from humanity's shared mythic substrata. The cornucopia in Fruit of the Loom's logo, for instance, mirrors ancient harvest symbols embedded in cultures worldwide. Our brains, hungry for familiar patterns, might be pulling from this primordial visual vocabulary without realizing it. Rupert Sheldrake's controversial theory of morphic resonance takes this idea even further, proposing that memory isn't stored solely in brains but in invisible fields that shape reality itself. Picture a tuning fork vibrating in one continent, causing another fork across the ocean to hum in unison, except the forks are human minds and the vibration is memory. According to Sheldrake, once enough people remember something a certain way, like Darth Vader's misquoted line, that version gains momentum, making it easier for future minds to recall the incorrect version. This could explain why Mandela effects spread like cognitive wildfires, with later generations absorbing the altered memory as if it were always true. The kicker: these theories blur the line between perception and creation. If enough people vividly remember Sinbad's genie movie, could morphic resonance theoretically will it into existence not as physical film, but as a psychic imprint strong enough to feel real? Sheldrake points to experiments where rats in one lab seemed to learn mazes faster after other rats elsewhere had already solved them, suggesting knowledge might transmit through unseen channels. Apply that to Mandela effects, and suddenly the idea of shared false memories takes on a stranger dimension. Maybe we're not misremembering. Maybe we're tuning into memories that others have already imprinted on the collective field. Yet critics slam these ideas as pseudoscience, arguing they rely on untestable metaphysics. Jung's synchronicities dismiss statistical probability, they say, while Sheldrake's morphic fields lack empirical scaffolding. But here's the rub. Even skeptics concede that something unnerving happens when independent minds converge on identical errors with no shared exposure. Whether it's Jung's symbols, Sheldrake's fields, or simple cognitive contagion, the Mandela effect forces us to reckon with a haunting possibility that memory might not be an isolated process, but a collaborative act wired into the very fabric of how we experience existence. And that raises a question neither science nor mysticism has fully answered. Where does the individual end and the collective begin? Want to prove whether that logo or movie quote really changed, or if your brain's playing tricks? Fact-checking Mandela effects isn't just about Googling, it's detective work, and the internet's archives are your crime lab. Start with the Wayback Machine, a digital time capsule that's crawled the web since 1996. Plug in Fruit of the Loom's website, and you can scroll through decades of logo snapshots. No cornucopia, not in 1999, 2005, or even 2012. But here's the catch: the Wayback Machine isn't perfect. It misses pages, and some images load as broken thumbnails. That's why you need backup tools like newspaper archives. Newspapers.com lets you search millions of scanned ads and articles. Pull up vintage Sunday circulars, and you'll spot the Fruit of the Loom logo in 1987. Sears catalogs just fruits, no Horn of Plenty. Even better, check patent databases. The U.S. Patent and Trademark Office keeps meticulous records of brand filings. Search Fruit of the Loom logo, and you'll find the original 1971 trademark submission: grapes, apples, and leaves. No mention of a cornucopia in the description or sketches. These documents are legal evidence, untouched by edits or corporate rebranding. For pop culture Mandela effects, IMDb's original scripts are gold. That Luke, I am your father debate, pull up the Empire Strikes Back script archives and you'll see the actual line, "No, I am your father," was never altered. Even better, hunt down raw footage. YouTube hosts original VHS rips of commercials and shows. Compare a 1994 Moonraker broadcast to today's streaming version. Darla's braces are mysteriously absent in both. The most eye-opening tool, side-by-side sliders. Sites like Photodiff let you overlay images to spot discrepancies. Drag the divider over Mr. Monopoly's face, and you'll see his monocle never existed. Not in 1936 board game art, not in 1980 McDonald's Happy Meal toys. Yet our brains insist it was there. These tools won't just settle arguments, they'll reveal something unsettling about how easily reality bends in our minds. Whether it's faulty neurons or glitching timelines, one thing's certain: the truth is hiding in plain sight. You just have to know where to look. To truly understand the Mandela effect firsthand, try this simple experiment with friends or family. It's like becoming a memory detective in your own living room. Start by gathering a small group and asking them to draw the Fruit of the Loom logo from memory. No peeking at labels or phones, just pure recall. You'll likely be stunned by the results. Odds are at least half will sketch that infamous cornucopia tucked behind the fruit, despite its absence from the actual design. But here's where it gets scientific. Introduce a control group. Have another set of people draw the logo after showing them the correct version first. Comparing these two sets of sketches reveals something fascinating. The control group's accuracy highlights how easily untainted memories can be overwritten once exposed to others' errors. Take it a step further with pop culture deep cuts. Play a clip of Darth Vader's Empire Strikes Back reveal, then ask participants to write down the line. Most will jot, "Luke, I am your father," despite the actual quote lacking the name. Now rerun the test with people who haven't heard the misquote beforehand. Their answers often skew closer to the truth. This mirrors psychological studies on memory contamination, proving how quickly external suggestions corrupt recall. For an even sharper experiment, try the silent majority approach. Secretly note who's familiar with Mandela effects beforehand, then compare their responses to newcomers. Frequently, those pre-exposed to the concept remember more discrepancies, showing how awareness primes the brain to spot or fabricate glitches. These tests aren't just party tricks. They're miniature replicas of the social contagion studies we discussed earlier, revealing how memories morph in real time. Want to eliminate bias? Use a double-blind method. Have one person read a list of brand names, some with common Mandela errors like Febreze, others correctly spelled, while a second person records which versions participants recognize. The kicker: the reader shouldn't know which terms are wrong, preventing unintentional cues. This setup often exposes how phonetic patterns like that extra E in Febreze hijack memory more than visual accuracy. These experiments do more than spark dinner table debates. They uncover the fragile mechanics of recall, showing how easily individual certainty crumbles under group influence or cultural priming. Whether you walk away convinced of parallel universes or just wary of your own brain's tricks, one thing's certain: reality is far more negotiable than we'd like to admit. And sometimes the most eye-opening discoveries start with a blank piece of paper and a simple question. What do you think you remember? Even celebrities aren't immune to the Mandela effect, and some have been baffled by the false memories fans swear are real. Take Ariana Grande, who faced a viral storm when thousands insisted she'd once said, "I hate America, I hate Americans." The quote spread like wildfire across social media, with fans claiming they'd heard it in interviews. But when confronted, Grande was stunned. "I would literally never say that," she tweeted, sharing screenshots proving the clip didn't exist. Yet the false memory persisted, fueled by edited videos and out-of-context snippets. Psychologists call this illusory truth effect. The more a lie is repeated, the more our brains accept it as fact, even when the subject themselves denies it. Then there's the Moonraker braces mystery. For decades, fans swore Dolly, the film's iconic Bond girl, flashed a mouthful of metal when she smiled after her encounter with Jaws. The moment became legendary, with viewers describing the brace's silver glint in vivid detail. There's just one problem: the scene never happened. When actor Barbara Bach, who played Dolly, was asked about it in a 2017 interview, she laughed in disbelief. "I never wore braces, not in the movie, not in my life." Director Lewis Gilbert backed her up, confirming no such scene was filmed. Yet fans continue to insist, some even claiming to own original VHS tapes with the missing footage. The intensity of this collective hallucination is so strong that when someone finally created a deepfake inserting braces onto Dolly, thousands reacted with "See, I told you," where they'd just fallen for digital trickery, proving the opposite. Sinbad's case is even stranger. The comedian has spent years debunking claims he starred in a 90s genie movie called Shazam. "I've never even worn a genie costume," he joked on the Adam Carolla show, baffled by the elaborate plot details fans remember. Yet the myth won't die. Some devotees have gone as far as recreating fake DVD covers and trailers, further cementing the illusion. When Sinbad hosted a marathon of his actual movies to prove the genie film's absence, it backfired. Viewers took it as evidence he was hiding something. These celebrity reactions reveal a chilling truth. Once a false memory takes root, not even first-hand denial can uproot it. The more a star pushes back, the more some fans interpret it as part of a cover-up, twisting reality into conspiracy. Whether it's Dolly's phantom braces or a fabricated Ariana Grande quote, these examples show how the Mandela effect doesn't just rewrite history, it gaslights its subjects, leaving even the misremembered scratching their heads. And that's the real magic trick, convincing us that the people who lived these moments are the ones misremembering. What happens when technology doesn't just distort memories but actively implants them? The next frontier of the Mandela effect might not be human error at all, but something far more deliberate. Brain tech interfaces capable of editing or even uploading memories directly into our neural circuitry. Companies like Meta are already diving headfirst into this uncharted territory with VR projects aimed at enhancing recollection. Imagine strapping on a headset and reliving your childhood birthday party, except now the cake is chocolate instead of vanilla, or a long-lost relative suddenly appears in the scene. While pitched as a tool for nostalgia or therapy, the potential for misuse is staggering. If advertisers could splice branded content into your cherished memories, or governments could rewrite collective history with a software update, the Mandela effect wouldn't just be a curiosity, it'd be a weapon. Meta's memory labs have already demonstrated the fragility of recall in virtual environments. In one trial, participants were shown AI-generated versions of their own past events with subtle alterations, a different outfit, a swapped background. After just 5 minutes of exposure, over 60% later described the manipulated details as genuine. Now scale that to mass media. If social media algorithms can already warp our perception of reality, what happens when they're hooked directly into our hippocampi? A single viral VR experience could rewrite entire generations' memories overnight, with no way to distinguish implanted fiction from lived truth. The ethical quagmire deepens when you consider neural-lace technology, experimental mesh, interfaces that fuse with brain tissue to enhance cognition. Elon Musk's Neuralink and similar ventures tout benefits like curing dementia or telepathic communication, but the same systems could theoretically inject memories as easily as retrieving them. Cybernetic memory modification isn't sci-fi anymore. It's a looming regulatory crisis. Imagine a world where misremembering the Berenstain Bears isn't a glitch, but proof your neural implant received a corporate-sponsored update. Legal frameworks are woefully unprepared. Current privacy laws focus on data collection, not cognitive manipulation. If a company like Google patented a method to encode product placements into episodic memory, would users consent when they clicked a terms of service agreement? And how would you litigate a case where plaintiffs can't prove whether their memories are original or implanted? The nightmare scenario isn't just fake memories, it's losing the very concept of objective recall. When every Mandela effect could stem from a tech company's beta test, reality becomes subscription-based. Yet for all the dystopian potential, there's an eerie symmetry here. The Mandela effect has always been about collective memory bending under invisible pressures. Whether those pressures come from faulty neurons, social contagion, or a meta-engineer's keystrokes might not matter in the end. The result is the same, a world where the past is negotiable and the truth is just the version enough people agree on, or the one some algorithm enforces. As we hurtle toward merging mind and machine, one thing's certain: the next generation of Mandela effects won't just haunt us, they'll be coded into our synapses. So where does this leave us? After winding through neuroscience, quantum physics, and even simulation theory, the Mandela effect remains one of reality's most tantalizing puzzles. On one hand, psychologists have shown how easily our brains construct false memories, stitching together fragments of pop culture, suggestion, and expectation until fiction feels like fact. The misinformation effect, social contagion, and confabulation all offer compelling explanations for why we might collectively remember things that never were. Yet on the other hand, the eerie consistency of these errors down to identical details across continents still leaves room for more unconventional ideas. Could quantum entanglement or multiverse collisions be imprinting alternate timelines onto our consciousness? Or are we simply witnessing the limits of human perception in an age of information overload? The truth might lie somewhere in between, Perhaps some Mandela effects are pure psychology, like the Monopoly man's phantom monocle, a perfect storm of expectation and visual shorthand. Others, though, resist easy explanation. Why would thousands independently describe the same plot points for a Sinbad genie movie that doesn't exist? Whether you lean towards science or speculation, one thing's undeniable. These glitches reveal how fragile our grip on reality truly is. Memory isn't a recording, it's a reconstruction, vulnerable to everything from advertising to particle accelerators. Here's where you come in. Start paying attention to those little dissonances, the logos that feel off, the quotes that don't match the script. Keep a reality journal, documenting shifts as they happen. Compare notes with friends before Googling and see if your raw memories align. This isn't just about solving a mystery, it's about training yourself to notice when the world doesn't quite match up. Because whether the Mandela effect is a quirk of cognition or a crack in the universe, awareness is the first step to understanding. So we'll leave you with this: which explanation resonates with you? Are we all just misremembering together, or is something stranger at play? The answer might depend less on the evidence and more on how much mystery you're willing to embrace. After all, reality has never been as solid as we'd like to believe, and that's what makes it so fascinating.